Hello, and welcome back to the Awakening Philosophy Podcast. My name is Jed, and we are in the Meno. We are finding Meno. Now, where are we so far in the text? Well, we have our friend Meno challenging Socrates, someone who's helping us out a lot because he personifies somebody who thinks he knows, and he has a teacher who he thinks highly of, where he gets his opinions from. He has a family that supports him in his opinions. He has a partner that supports him. He has a society. All of these concentric circles around Meno that Socrates recognizes in just seeing the man, which is a curious puzzle. How can Socrates see all of this straight away? But all leading to his idea of what good is, of what the excellence of the soul is, or virtue, and how to use it. As Socrates says, hey, your idea of what wisdom is you go around answering any questions from anyone, taking all comers. So, because that's what you think it means to be wise and virtuous. Like ask me anything or debate me on anything, bro. We have these memes. These people who try and get clicks and they say, prove me wrong, I'll debate anything. So from there, Socrates says, hey, why don't we define what virtue is before we talk about whether or not it can be taught? Meno says, easy. Come on, easy. I'll tell you what it is. It's doing good to your friends, harm to your enemy, and escaping any harm yourself. Escaping being caught in any way yourself. Now, never suffering harm. So, different virtues for a man and a woman, apparently. Edgy take. Different virtues for an old person as well. Different virtues for a kid. And different virtues for a slave. A red hot take there. That there are different virtues for a slave. You happen to be born into a certain family or race, your idea of excellence for the soul is different. It's obeying that kid born in that family. Why? Good question. Ask Meno. Ask Meno why slavery should exist. Anyway, that's where we are. Socrates said, hey, you've given me a swarm of definitions or swarm of virtues when I just wanted one definition of what exactly it is. Let me teach you what it means to give a definition. Let me help you understand what it is. And then he has his first dialectic on what virtue is. Hey, by the way, virtue, it's one thing. It has to be. It's one of the ideas. That's a really simple definition of what excellence is. It's one of the ideas. Now, recently we've had people joining the community from a formal academic philosophy tradition, and what they get taught when they get taught how to read Socrates is not the word idea, but form. Like there's some object, or sometimes a concept. But the word idea, it means to behold. It's one of the aspects of beholding in being. So when we experience nous, the part of our mind that can know reality all at once, sometimes called the brilliant light of being, that experience, the different aspects of that singular oneness, they are the ideas. These are the objects of knowledge that we seek. Because they're eternal. They're true. They're immortal. These sorts of things. They're the sorts of words that describe being, or ousia. Ousia is a Greek word we have to use because we don't have a word for English. It means the essence of being able to turn around and know yourself as mind. So, yay. That's what a virtue is, if it's universal. If it exists, it has to be in being. By the way, how do the ideas, how do they function? We've got definition, now demonstration. Socrates is using this, balloons, in a dialogue. it functions we use it to focus our attention on when we do a dialectic. That's how we use it. Oh, demonstration. Now, division. How does this functioning divide up? Well, for this dialectic, which we went through, it divides up in, hey, how can you, what we've just defined, what have we defined? Idea. What is it? In being. Definition. How does it demonstrate itself? It's our object of focus that we need to have when answering questions or asking questions. Okay? Now that we've defined what an idea is and how it functions, can we divide it up into other examples? Lots of balloons. That's number 3, division. Let's divide it up. What are some other ideas in being? Health. Health exists. Size, strength. And hey, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. Size is still universally true for you. Big and small. Big and small women, just as big and small men. Health. A healthy woman is just as healthy as a healthy man. Strength. If you can bench 50 pounds and a woman can, that's still the same strength. So that's division. This is normally the stage where you unfold many examples or illustrations or arguments that somebody who isn't following yet can follow. And then from those divisions, a conclusion. Therefore, what? What's the conclusion? From the many divisions into one, many to one. Therefore, all ideas don't differ. Ideas. I'll use the word idea because it's not idea in English. That's different. It's just they sound the same, but they're different words. All eidos, ideas are the same. Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. There's our conclusion. So we've had a definition. Virtue is an idea. Demonstration. We put our attention on it when doing dialectics. Number 3, division. Here are some other examples of what we've just defined. Other ideas. Strength, health, size. Conclusion. There's 2 parts to our conclusion. Synthesis. Synthesizing it into a principle. Therefore, ideas don't change. Doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, or black or green or purple or whatever. And now the next part of conclusion, bringing it back to the top. Make it relevant to what we're talking about. That's called analysis. Synthesis, analysis. Okay? Therefore, virtue. This idea. So what's the principle? Ideas don't change depending on the physical examples. In our physical world, men, women, often adjectives. The adjectives applied to things in our physical world doesn't matter. The idea doesn't change. Therefore, the idea of virtue doesn't change. What we defined as virtue and idea doesn't change also. So very beautiful, very precise, very elegant, and self-contained. So that convinced Meno. Oh, I learn't something new about virtue. He gave Socrates a big hug, gave him some money because it sounds like he's from a rich family. He was able to afford Gorgias as a teacher. He subscribed to him on YouTube, and he supported Socrates' Patreon, and then he went on his way. Oh no, that didn't happen. Whoops.
Wow. He didn't know what solipsism was.
But hey,
What?
That's one for the blooper reel.
That didn't happen.
That's one for the blooper reel.
That was a mistake on my part. He accepted the principle. He didn't like it being applied to this particular virtue. And so we went on to our second dialectic. We're learning about what it means to think in terms of a dialectic, how useful it is, how Socrates thinks. And also, we're imagining what virtue is. so long as we follow the stages of dialectic, not only are we learning the principle of dialectic, that is the highest functioning that we can have in our physical world, it's the most ousia-like. Notice, unfolds rationally and returns back to the start, just like ousia unfolds and returns in mind itself or being. Also unfolds our physical world. It's the creation of our physical, creator of our physical world. So we're being like it. We're also learning how to do dialectics, how to dialogue well. But also we're imagining what virtue is. We are doing it. We are benefiting in a way that Meno may not be benefiting. So yay for us. Now, thankfully, Meno wasn't happy with that, so we get to do another one. Get another dialectic. So another opportunity to do all those things. Learn the logos, learn the dialectic, learn how to think, learn how to function helpfully with our friends and not attack or fight or debate or argue, all that bullshit that we are taught to do in our world. No, we're learning a better way of relating to ourselves and to others. And also, we get to imagine what exactly virtue is while understanding it. So, oh my goodness, Socrates is really spoiling us, aren't we lucky puppies? So the second dialectic. Oh, before I do that, let's check in with chat. Thank you so much for joining me on chat. Everyone is welcome to join on Twitch chat or YouTube as we stream live. If you want notifications for when we go live, you can join the Discord. Great, you're live. Yes, we are live. I was searching for different levels of reading the self, but I did not manage to find it. I got a copy of the Republic with my native language. Oh, what is your native language? Full of good notes, but there is no self. Oh yes, one of the great betrayals. So I'm reading alongside one in Balboa. I believe this transcription you did recommend me. Yes, the Balboa one. It's free and it has the word self. So let's quickly address, we've done this before, but no harm in going over it again. As we read, what are we doing? Well, we are on the hero's quest, the hero's journey. So how do we read? Well, that is a question. One of our questions that we carry with us is what exactly is reading? How do we read? That's a puzzle. I don't know what it is, but we're figuring it out. But we have some bits that we carry with us. This is us.
You're a wizard, Harry.
We're a wizard. That's us there. Just change my brightness a little bit. There we go. So as we read, we look for key terms. Look for key terms. Now, if we want to know what virtue is, well, there are some key terms that have jumped out for us. We should be keeping notes. Keep a little notebook. What do we know about virtue? It's an idea. We keep our eye on it when we do dialectic. Some examples of an idea: strength, size, health. So taking notes, looking for key terms. Look for patterns. Is there patterns on how these key terms are given to us or how they're used? Hey, he seems to give us 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Oh, but here, hang on a second. When he's defining this new idea, he gives us 1 and 3, but he misses 2. If we see a pattern, we can discover questions. Because sometimes he establishes a pattern and then he leaves out one of them in order to give you a puzzle to discover, a question. Let me give you an example. If you're playing a video game and you are playing like Resident Evil or something like that, you're walking down a hall and then you see a painting and there's a picture and there are 2 gems in the eyes of that picture, and then you go further, there's another picture. The guy who owns the house owns the haunted mansion and he's got a gem in each eye. And then you go to another one and then there's the landlord, picture of the landlord of the mansion, and he's got a gem in his left eye, but there's no gem in his right eye. The game designer has established a pattern of terms eyes and gems, so that if you're paying attention, if you're playing the game, you'll realize, oh, this one is missing. So I've discovered the question. I didn't have to be told it. So long as I'm playing, I will discover it. And from the pattern, I have to figure out what would be needed in this missing spot. What's needed is a gem. So I've got to go and find the missing gem and then put it back in its right place. This is how puzzles are given. We can also relate it to analogy. If I say, hey, a shepherd is to his sheep like a king is to his people, and I talk about the relationship between these, and I say, hey, by the way, the shepherd also has a dog. And I just leave it there, and we end our talk. You have to figure out, hang on a second, we've established some key terms. The lesser set of key terms, shepherd is to sheep, and the greater. So those are our terms we're looking for. If you see the word self in front of a term, that's usually a clue. Self-er terms. So we've established some terms. Just turn down my lights a little bit. And we've also established a pattern. One, the lesser and then the greater, the lesser and then the greater. So now, if we go, we can be learning about, so everything the author has told me about how a shepherd cares for his sheep, I need to figure out how a king also relates to his people in that way. But actually, hang on a second, he mentioned the shepherd has a dog. He didn't tell us what the equivalent for a king is. You have to figure it out. So you have to not only discover the answer, but also discover the question too. So that's using analogy, analogical abduction. So you've got deduction, where you have the principle, and you have to deduction. You have the principle and you work down, D for down. How do you apply it? Induction. It's like science. You look at the particulars and you try and induce a theory. Abduction is where you have a bit of both. So we're doing using analogy to do analogical abduction. We've given some of the high, some of the greater, some of the lesser, but you can have missing terms in either. That's how Socrates helps us. And that's the importance of having the actual Greek, because most of the key terms are not translated in non-Balboa translations. A lot of the patterns are not kept in the other translations. So you can't really be doing philosophy unless you're in a Balboa translation. Sorry to burst any balloons? Sorry to burst anyone's balloons. But thankfully, Balboa is free and you can read it yourself. So look for questions. And then when you get questions, hey, create a hypothesis. And if maybe this is a way of answering the question, take them both in your sack. This is in your sack, in your inventory. That's how we are an adventurer. It's like a video game, but it's the real video game. It's the video game you are in as a human being. Now, also, we look for patterns. We look for triads. We look for sets of 4. It's just a square. We look for 5s. And we take those as well. We call them our skill trees. For example, we have in our reading, we have a triad, a set of 3. Apollo is our reading the Logos. That's called philosophy. Aphrodite is we have to make meaningful connections to make it inspiring or powerful or motivating for us. Meaningful connections of the parts coming together as a whole. So that's a principle that we need to be able to read. It's not just a dry, dusty thing like Apollo only. It's also inspiring and beautiful how the parts that we get from our reading can come together into a whole. In other words, the puzzles can be solved. And it has a meaningful consequence when we solve them. It affects our way of thinking. It affects our understanding, which affects our seeing, which affects our ability to function in the world. It affects our state of mind. This is personal development. Those higher states of mind and levels of seeing and functioning is called levels of enlightenment. So it's also spiritual development. But if you're doing both of them together, Apollo and Aphrodite, at the bottom, they come together to reach a peak or hyparxis. Hyparxis is a fancy word that you can use with your friends to sound very smart and clever, and they will love you. Hyparxis is the top of the pyramid or the fullest flowering. And in this particular triad, the peak of what we do with Apollo, philosophy and reading, and Aphrodite, seeing the connections, having the insights, seeing the greater wholes, being inspired, those two come together for Hermes. Hermes is a messenger god. He takes us from where we are all the way to the top of the mountain to meet the gods and be with the gods. Hermes represents the dialectic. So that's the fullest flowering of philosophy, which is why we spend so much time reflecting on the dialectic. We're looking for it in our reading. So we're kind of killing two birds with one stone. We're reading with the key terms and looking for the puzzles to remember and repeat. Talk to your friends about it over coffee. And of course, whenever I say coffee, have a lovely sip of coffee. But also we're reading it with a second level, Hermes. Can we also find the dialectic structure behind how Socrates thinks? And can we make it our own? Can we make it our own? Can we master this as an art? So there's a triad. Now, there's another kind of triad. Being, power, and activity. These are a triad of forces. So now we've got two. We can rub them against each other, like rubbing two sticks against each other. So we have our skill tree in our inventory. Skill tree is a term in video games. You might level up your ability to wield a sword. You might level up your ability to use a bow and arrow. But then once you get a high ability here and a high ability here, you can combine them and you can use your bow and arrow, but put your sword as the arrow and you have an even higher ability. You've leveled up. When you combine the abilities within that skill tree together. So another example is maybe you are a mage or a magician. You have the ability to cast frost spells quicker, and then this is in the frost skill tree. You might also have a fire skill tree, but as you gain an ability to cast spells quicker, and also in your frost skill tree you level up your frost abilities. So now you have a mega ball, a mega frost ball, and maybe you've got another one. Every time you hit an enemy with your frost spells, they freeze for a few seconds. What happens is you can join them together. Maybe now I can more quickly send a more powerful frost ball that also freezes them together. I can combine them together to create a super mega ultimate weapon. That's how skill trees work, more or less. So we're doing the same, only we're not applying it to make-believe abilities. We are learning human abilities, the abilities of our psyche, and what Socrates calls the reason we are here, the game we are supposed to be playing. So how does that work? How is this analogous? Well, now that we've got 2 triads in our triad skill tree, can we rub them together to gain insights? Okay. Okay, can we understand Apollo as a kind of activity? Is what we're doing when we read, is that an activity? Yeah. Okay, cool. It's an activity. I get it. Does that mean that Aphrodite is a kind of power that is needed for that activity? Well, let's think about it. If you were just reading because you have to get a degree and because you paid a lot of money to your teacher, or because your parents will give you lots of praise if you get that degree, is it going to be difficult to muster the inspiration or the internal motivation? But if you're also making your own meaningful connections about your own personal development, which we just talked about, would that be inspiring? Would that inspiration be a kind of power that will be able to be used to do the activity? Does that help us understand the significance of Aphrodite along with Apollo? Yeah, kind of does, right? So we're gaining insights. We are leveling up. But not only do we rub it together to get insights, we could say, hang on a second, well, if that's the case, now we're doing abduction. Now, deduction is when you have a principle. All unmarried men are bachelors. So now we just have to apply it to particulars. Or, so if we come across Bill, who's an unmarried man, we apply that down to deduce he must be a bachelor. That's thinking when you have the higher term. Induction is like modern physics, modern science, where we don't know the principles. Right, I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm getting to your question about self, by the way, but it's a bit of a journey.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
So that's deduction. Induction is where, like in modern science, where we just see the particulars in the physical world and we have to theorize or induce or make a hypothesis about what the principle could be. So, famously, Newton looked at an apple falling on his head, if that happened, and induced a theory about gravity. But then along came Einstein, and he was able to make even more accurate observations of the physical world using light. And he realized, oh, that theory that was induced by Newton actually isn't true. I can come up with an even more accurate theory to explain gravitation. And that's science. They can never know. They can just make better guesses with better evidence and so forth. But induction is where you have a little from column A, a little from column B. You know something of there, and you know something of there. For our example, we know something about what's the lesser? The lesser would be a shepherd and his sheep. So we know a little bit about that. We know a little bit about how a king relates to his people. So we might know, okay, there's a dog for a shepherd. We don't know what's up here, but we know the king has a throne. So we know some things here at the top that we don't know here. We know that there is a term for throne in the higher, but we don't know what it is in the lesser. So we can figure out what would the equivalent be of a king's throne for a shepherd in the lower. Likewise, we know that there's a dog in the lower, but we don't know what the greater is. What would be the guard dog for a king? So that's abduction. And that's what we play with Socrates. Sometimes he gives us the principle like virtue is an idea. Sometimes he gives us the lesser. And you have to induce the greater or deduce the lesser. That's analogical abduction. So thankfully we're talking with someone like Socrates who knows both and is helping us out. Now that's something we don't know for certain until we get to his level of mind and we can verify it for ourselves. But we keep an open mind and we trust the logos as we go. So with that in mind, we can have a look at these. Well, we've connected power to Aphrodite. We've connected activity to Apollo. Does that mean that Hermes is a being or a ruling or a ruler? I have no idea. So we've given birth to not better understanding or not a new insight. We've given birth to a question, and these are often even better. We've got a new question. How the heck could Hermes be a ruling term or being to the power of Aphrodite and the activity of Apollo? We take that question and we put it in our inventory and we carry it with us. And we even polish it up nicely. Can we say our question in fewer words? Or maybe we can add other questions to it and make a mega question. But we carry a question. That's being open and curious and focused and wondering and talking with our friends. All these things come along with having a question. So that's how we have skill trees. Now, why are we talking about that now? Well, here's another skill tree we have. Last time we talked about how there can be 3 levels of reading or watching a film. Like using Inception as an example. You watch Inception and there's a narrative. Leonardo DiCaprio has to do Inception to the businessman and then he gets his children. And that's the main narrative. There'll be a question that's given and it will be answered at the end of the film. If it's not answered, then when you go to the film, your grandma who's watching it with you will get very mad and it will get bad reviews because most people just think in that level. They just think simply in terms of the obvious narrative. Only the particulars. Just the particulars. Now, at the end of Inception, if it's or any film, there should be a twist. If you've seen Inception, you have the spinning top at the end and you have you are given a new question. Uh-oh, here's a new question. But you're not given the answer this time. You have to, how can you review something that he's just watched once? Right. So you have to go through. I like Inception or Fight Club. These are good examples of this. Grandma is happy to walk away with just the narrative, but you realize there's a twist and you have to go through everything you learned about solving this question. You have to figure out and apply it to this question. Otherwise, it's like, hang on a second. If the real question wasn't this, why did I have to spend 2 hours learning about how dreams work, learning about how inceptions work, learning about how you can, you can adjust the environment sometimes in dreams. But if you say too much about it being a dream, all of the other dream characters will attack you and try and kill you. All of these rules that we were given in the film, what the heck was the point? For it to be not a waste of time, you have to apply everything that you learned about how to solve this question, apply it to your new question, but at a higher level. Analogy, everything you learned about how a shepherd relates to his sheep in the narrative of the particulars, apply it to the higher question. What's a higher question than how a shepherd should look after a sheep? How a king should rule his people. That's the second level. Now, good film will have a third level. Once you've figured this out, There'll be a third level. Often you have to go on a YouTube deep dive down a rabbit hole of all of these weirdos with their film theories
But hey, that's just a theory.
to get this, to figure out that there is a third level. Only this time, you're not given the answer, but you're also not even given the question. You have to figure out the question that's implied, which is awesome because it's yours. You have ownership of it. You feel a kinship with it. It's your question. You want to solve it. And there's a question. Well, hang on a second. How do I figure out this higher question? Well, in the same way that you use the material to answer on a higher level, the material of shepherd to sheep are related. Use the way that you found the second question. Use the difference between these two questions, find a pattern, apply it again to find a third level. What were the principles for the twist that he gave you? He gave you a twist. What was the principles behind the twist? Apply those principles to the twist to get the third level of reading. That should be the most meaningful. That gives the greater reward or benefit for those who really watch at that level.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey, says Joe Rogan.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
Instead, I want to find the deeper level of the text.
But hey, that's just a theory.
And so you can go to film theory YouTube sites that do that. But you don't have to go to them because they're just doing this. You want to do it yourself. Now, we read in this way, 3 levels of meaning. So the shepherd, okay, let's give a different word. So the shepherd would be the lower, or we could say it's the particular. The particular. But the highest, what's the highest level of ruling something? It's not ruling your sheep, it's the honorific. Honorific. That's the highest you can rule something. So that's moving from a shepherd to a king. But hey, is there something beyond even being a ruler of a country? What about the game we're in? How about being a ruler of your own soul? That's the ultimate. So now we have a new triad: particular, honorific, ultimate. Now in philosophy, there's also that same pattern. This is why we look for patterns. What's this pattern in philosophy? Well, there's the physical world of becoming. Everything is becoming. You're growing or decaying. Everything is in change in the physical world, right? But hey, that's where a lot of people stop. Your grandma, she only watches the narrative of Inception, and most people in the world, they only look at the physical world. All they relate to is their physical senses. Socrates had that problem. He had a problem finding a teacher who was looking at the metaphysical world, or the world of being. So that's called the, let's say, metaphysics. Let's say mind or being. So not becoming, but being. Physical world, or the realm of being. Now, formally, philosophy that we study is not about the world of becoming, it's only about the realm of being. That's why we can't say we are learning how to understand. We have to use the word dianoia. Dianoia means understanding the realm of being. Now, in our reading, Meno was like, oh, I can define what virtue is. Let me give you a bunch of examples in the world of becoming. The virtue of a man ruling a state. The virtue of a woman ruling her kitchen. the virtue of a slave doing what he's told. And Socrates says, no, you can't do that. That's not a definition. Those are examples. That's philosophy. Everything that you see in your physical world is just examples. Let's take another idea, beauty. You can see an example of a beautiful person or a beautiful puppy or a beautiful painting, but if someone said to you, what's beauty? And you just point to examples or adjectives, you would say, no, that's not a definition. So if you want to know what's the cause, now this is important. As you climb the ladder, you're going up to higher causes. You're climbing the causal ladder. What's the cause of the adjectives? Well, you need a noun. You need beauty itself. Or, as it says in the Greek, self-beauty. So that's the next level of self-beauty in the honorific. So what we study with the dialectic is things in the realm of being. We don't care what happens in our physical world. We don't care who Tom Cruise is dating. We don't care about the hot drama with the YouTube celebrities. We are interested in what's true forever. So we can find the truth about beauty, the truth about virtue, and we can have the excellence of our soul. So in the chat, the shepherd just sees what it feels. Honorific sees the idea in action, like friendship, justice. Right, so not the idea in action, but the idea itself. Its action would be how it functions. So in the dialectic, we say, okay, what's beauty itself? Self to self. The next category would be, how does it function? How does beauty function towards something else? Like, how does beauty function towards our soul? How does beauty function towards justice? So that's demonstration. We are after what the thing is. That's why we do the dialectic. And Socrates is saying, hey, not how virtue functions or how it divides up into all these examples, but what is it itself, self to self. That's definition. So yes, so friendship, love, justice, equality, what are those things in the realm of being that you can only see if you can use the dialectic to collect your soul together from all of the parts of your body, your desires, your senses, and then separate it from your body. That allows you to perceive the world of being. That's called nous. Nous is the ability to see the realm of being. That's what we're after. Dianoia is understanding that realm using the dialectic. So that's why we need nous and dianoia. This is why the Balboa translation is so important. The equivalent, so if you have, dianoia only are related to the particular world or the realm of becoming, you have what's called understanding. That's how we use the word. You can understand how your bike works. You can understand how to fix your car engine. So we have a beautiful thing. Beautiful thing. Instead of self-beauty. And what's it called when you master how to fix a bike or how to fix an engine? You could say you have the knowledge of being a mechanic, when you can not only understand it, but also put it into action or experience. LEDGE. Now, all of the translations of Socrates up until the Balboa translation have only had understanding and knowledge. They have all, really all, even all, yes, all.
Have you read Brand at all?
All?
Have you read Brand at all? Have you read Brand at all? Have you read Nagel? What about
All of them?
Wow.
That's one for the blooper reel.
All of them have only used the word understanding and knowledge. One reason, there are lots of reasons why, including the problems of the translator, the historical forces of the government and the religious leaders and the institutions, the academic institutions. But one reason is we don't have a word for understanding applied to the honorific, applied to the realm of being. We don't have a word for knowledge of the realm of being. So we have to pick up the Greek words dianoia and nous. Otherwise, we won't see it. In other words, you can't do philosophy unless you have a language that allows you to do it. So another reason is, well, the Latin tradition that killed the Greek tradition that we are in, the European tradition, doesn't even have a word for the. So we can have a particular beautiful thing, but we can't ask the questions, what is the thing itself? Now, thankfully, English has a word for the, but there are many traditions that still exist today that can't do philosophy because they can't ask what is the beautiful. They can only point to a. I've got a friend who said his friends are Bosnian and they don't have a word for the. And so he wanted them to pass him the apple that was on the table. And he's asked it in Bosnian, but he used the English word for the. Now they can only say, can you pass me an apple? You can't say, can you pass me the apple? So he used an English word and they all laughed at him and they mocked him for a very, very long time. And they might even still think that's funny. You can't say that, you weirdo. Right. Meno's examples could be seen as division. Nicely done. That's the game. Good for you. Apply whatever level of understanding the dialectic you have, apply it to the text as much as you can. By my conclusion from his division, I should question Meno's judgment. Ooh, good. Fraction of the idea. That's insane. It is insane. Yeah. Now be careful who you tell it to. Dr. Grimes, who has this book that we read, which is the Dialectic Applied to Uncovering and Solving Your Problems. We have a series on that. It's called Philosophical Midwifery. He was invited to give a talk in Russia. Huge talk. A lot of experts and academics. This was a long time ago. And he said, oh, by the way, you guys can't do philosophy because you don't have a word in your language for the. Philosophy is specifically about the realm of being. The dialectic is applied to things that have an existence in eidos or ousia. And they got very mad. Oh, no. But that means that means you're very good at poetry. And you have very good authors like, I don't know, who's a famous Russian author? Dostoevsky. And they're very proud of Dostoevsky and that sort of thing. So that kept the heat off his back. But it's important for us to realize, because some people watching this series might have a native language which doesn't have the word the. And if they try and speak about the beauty or the virtue, as Socrates is doing with Meno, they might be mocked by their family. So just keep that in mind. But don't give up the game just because they can't play and they mock you for being different. One of us, right? It's okay to be different from the group. But also, equally so, there are some words we don't have in English, like nous and dianoia, that you absolutely need. That's why we need the Balboa translation to be doing philosophy. Not only that, sometimes Socrates is saying, hey, you need to move from understanding into dianoia, two different words in Greek, but the other translations give it the same word, so it doesn't make sense. You've got to move from understanding into understanding. What does that mean? This is a problem if you don't have the actual words. And also, we talked about abduction, analogical abduction. It's so well written that sometimes he will miss out a word, so you have to figure out, oh, there's something missing. I would only have realized there's something missing if I was paying personal, close attention to the patterns and the key terms. So if he writes like that, he'll miss out a word on purpose. So you go, oh, I feel like something doesn't fit. A splinter in your mind. That's the beginning of a question. Now, some translators don't know this. Most translators don't know this. And so when they play loose and fast with their translations, they will miss all of the questions. So it's very weird. I can't even, what analogy would I give to reading philosophy without the Balboa translation? It's like it's like trying to be a vet and all you have is Clifford the Big Red Dog, the children's book. It's so you can't learn how to heal a dog when you've just got a story about a giant dog that's friends that is bigger than a house and likes to eat bones. There's not enough information to become a vet. That's like philosophy up until the Balboa translation. And of course, a lot of people are like Meno. They have a lot of money invested in their education. They love their teacher. They have a family that likes that they are a well-respected philosopher, and they might not like hearing this. So we have to tell the truth, but also say, hey, but that's okay. You can learn something new. You can benefit. You can become a better philosopher if you get into this game, if you can awaken philosophy in this way. So we're not excluding you. Now that's often gatekeeping. That's often a feature of the academic tradition. You can't teach philosophy. You don't have a degree. You got to spend all this money and has to waste all this time and read Kant and Hegel.
He didn't know what solipsism was. He didn't know what deontological moral philosophy was. He didn't know what utilitarianism meant.
So that's our friend Tim Pool. Not really a friend, but they will use, oh, you don't know these big words? Well, you can't do philosophy. Nonsense. Philosophy is open to everyone willing to have fun reading. Imagine the teachers who learn without that. Yes, imagine them. Yes. That's the thing. If you start to realize that, hang on a second, this logos that we are learning must come from a source in being, then what happens? Then you hang on a second. If the logos and the dialectic exists in being, then all of the things we learn about being, divine, powerful, intelligent, life, vitality itself, life itself, intelligence itself, then the logos that we are discovering is alive, cares about you. So every moment you are playing out a dialectic. You're either playing out a dialectic of what's true. So a dialectic has two kinds. Yes, if it is or if it doesn't exist. So you're either playing out a dialectic unfolding in your life, what happens if you have the logos, or you're unfolding your problem, the pathologos. So the reason why we repeat the cycles of problems and negative states of mind and failures and blocks is because we are stuck inside B of the dialectic. What if the logos doesn't exist, or the pathologos exists? So everything is, we're all philosophers. What we're doing is learning how to play the game. So another triad is the realm of being and the physical world. And of course, if it's a triad, we have the ultimate. Well, we've got ultimate up here, so let's give it a different word. The one self. In philosophy, even above the realm of being, because even the realm of being has to have a cause, that's the one self. That's the ultimate term above the honorific. Stuck in an imaginary loop, absolutely. Now, what's cool about the dialectic is you start with a definition. How would you define the thing that is? Then how does it function? Then how can it, does that thing that functions, how does it affect other things? How does it affect, let's take the logos. Let's take your belief about the self. What is the belief you have about the self? How does it function? What states of mind does it give you? How does it divide up into your relationships, into your play, into your work, into the activities you do? Then after having lived out those things, can you see any common key terms, patterns, questions? The same way we read, are there any themes or patterns or key terms that stand out? That synthesis. You take those divisions of the every area of your life, you synthesize it together, and then you analyze it, which means you take it back to the start. But when you go back to the start, because you've reflected and you've understood in a new way, when you return, your definition is now better than when you started. Which means you've got a greater understanding, which means you can start a new dialectic. So you unfold, but you go back to the start, but you end up with more understanding than when you started. So you do another dialectic, the same thing, end up better than you started. You're cycling up. You're spiraling up through ousia, or self-reflection. Now, our problem keeps us stuck because you don't learn anything new. If you're certain about your beliefs and opinions, then everything that you do will just demonstrate your own opinions. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like if you think, oh, I stink, or nobody likes me. So this is a false definition of yourself. That will demonstration have a state of mind. So if you probably feel sad and grumpy and miserable, and then in your life, you go to the pub with your friends, or you go on a date with a girl, or you go out to play sport, and because of that state of mind, you end up being a real bore, being a wet blanket, and no one wants to play with you. And then from all of those experiences, you create a conclusion synthesis that you apply back to the start. And what's the conclusion? Nobody likes me, which is the same thing you started with. A self-fulfilling prophecy. So you don't change, you stay stuck in your false opinions about yourself, about reality, about beauty, about all of it. And also look at how much energy it took from you in all of these stages. It's a parasite of your energy. So while the dialectic that we're learning with Socrates spirals up to higher and higher levels of development, up the stages of evolution or personal development or spiritual development, our problem, our false belief about self and reality, keeps us stuck where we are. So sometimes we'll get people coming to this channel and they'll have, this is my opinion. Like, okay, do you want to phrase it in a dialectic? What if it does? What if your opinion is true and what if it isn't true? Nope. So what's going to happen? Well, I'm going to walk away with whatever I already started with. But what if everybody here disagrees with you? What if Socrates disagrees with you? The smartest man to ever walk the planet. Don't care. It just proves that I'm the smart one and my teacher was really smart and I was really clever to spend $300,000 on a degree. They stay stuck, even if they're learning from Socrates. Well, then how do we connect with other people who have different opinions? Well, understanding can bring us together because understanding is true and universal. Why? Because understanding, dianoia, is about dianoia is about the realm of being. That's true for everyone. It's immortal. It's true for any species or any alien planet. It's the truth. It's understanding. We can be united in that. So, staying at the particulars or the world of becoming is the cause for debates and fighting and war and hating each other and arguments and all of the irrational bullcrap that we suffer through as a human species and within our souls. Do you ever beat yourself up? Do you ever find yourself putting yourself down? That's not the dialectic. The dialectic encourages you to reflect with reason on the nature of being, to realize that, hey, this realm of being can be called the experience of the self, the idea of the self. Now, we know that that would be moving from grandma's way of watching a film to her clever, handsome grandson's way of, or granddaughter's way of watching the film. Actually, Grandma, do you know that you have to watch the film again because there was a twist? And she'll say, "Oh, you're such a smart and handsome young man. You're so clever. That's over Grandma's head. I'm just going to make cookies and you can think about, we'll get the DVD and you can watch it yourself and figure out that next level. You're such a smart, handsome man." And you get to watch it a second time with Grandma's delicious cookies. But we know that after we go through and figure out the twist, there's probably a third level that you have to really wonder about and try and figure out the question.
I don't want to eat a monkey. I don't want to eat a
Don't
monkey.
want to eat a monkey. You want to eat Grandma's cookies.
But hey, that's just a theory.
A film theory. So how does that apply to? So this is what we're doing. We see a triad over here. How do we apply it over here to our reading? Blocks should be viewed as steps to reach higher reach of the idea. Complaining about the block won't raise it above the block. Right, so what we're doing is we have a series called Philosophical Midwifery, where we apply the same dialectic we're practicing on being, what is true. It's what Socrates is doing. What is true about virtue in being? We apply that not to what is true in being, but to what we are carrying about being and ourself that's false. So we have to discover our problems. Right, we have that. The book is worth getting, and you can follow along on the YouTube. We carry false beliefs. So if we realize, if part of philosophy is realizing that this realm of being is our own mind, but we have a false belief that we are dumb, then we can't have both. You can't have the false belief that you are stupid and realize that your actual mind is all of intelligence, all at once. That's the realm of being. They're incompatible. You have to pick one. So that's why as we read philosophy, we're also doing midwifery. Because as we learn about what's true, we have to surface and remove what's false. Purification and perfection. Now, above the realm of being, there is the ultimate, above the honorific. So your question was, how does that refer to the word self? The word self, or altos, let's zoom in a little bit. The word self, or altos or self, has within its word has the particular. So when you read it, you can read it as it. Has the honorific, which means the ideal or the excellence. Like virtue. Virtue means honorific because it's the excellence of something. When you say, hey, what's the virtue of our soul? What's the excellence of our soul? Or what's the virtue of a horse? What's the best a horse can be? That's virtue. E-X-C-E-L-L-E-N-C-E. This is what we're focusing on. And Socrates is saying, hey, Meno, if virtue or excellence is in being, then you're just giving me the particular examples. I want the thing itself. Now, Meno's at this level, Socrates is talking at this level, but of course, there is that third level of reading.
Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow. Wow.
So we have to discover what that is, which would be the ultimate, or the one self, or the good self. The one self or good self. Notice, in the honorifics, we're talking about self. So, how does this relate to the word self? Well, let's give it this color here. The word altos means just in the word all of them, because the particular or it, like for example, oh, I picked the tastiest apple of the bunch, and I really enjoyed eating self. I really enjoyed eating it. That's how you would translate it in grandma's level. Now, we know we're not reading Socrates to learn about the particular apples. We want to know what reality is. So then we replace that word, we read the sentence a second time, and we put in the honorific. Now, so we have self beauty, or self B-E-A-U-T-Y, or self justice, and things like that. Now, altos also has the one self. So that is a third level that we have to really wonder about as we read. Now, this is going to be the most confusing. Right, so Brittany, what we're talking about is taking that opinion, which may or may not be true. If it's an opinion, we either already agree with you, in which case no one's benefited, or we already disagree with you, and then we can have a fight about it or a debate about it, or we can just not talk to each other. What we want to do is turn our opinions into dialectics, because everyone can share in a dialectic. And we can also benefit ourselves by being open to higher and new ways of seeing. Even if your opinion happens to be true, by going through a dialectic, which is what? Let's get rid of this so we can make some space. By putting it in a dialectic, you review it in a systematic way of thinking, so you're also learning how to think and how to communicate. You're saying, if S is, there are two things in a dialectic. The subject and another. So you pick two things to rub against each other. So in your opinion, consciousness or self is an illusion. Okay, let's take that opinion. If self is an illusion, then your subject that you want to discuss is self. So you have two sections. If self exists, if self doesn't exist. So your opinion would fit in part B. So if self exists, do a definition of what it would be. Then in the next paragraph, how does the self that exists function? Now, how does the self that's functioning, how do those other things having been affected, how would it divide up into other areas? And then from that, unify it together, that synthesis, and apply it back to the start. Then do everything you've just done for side B. If self doesn't exist, how would you define it? It's an illusion. Then how does it function towards something else? Pick something. How does the illusionary self affect our soul? How does the illusionary self affect beauty? Hey, if we're talking about beauty itself, or self-beauty, what would it mean if this is an illusion? Does that mean that all of the other beings, beauty itself doesn't exist? There's no such thing as truth itself. There's no such thing as beauty itself. There's no such thing as justice. So kicking a pup and then, so that's how it would demonstrate. And that's self itself. What can you say about it itself if it doesn't exist inside B? How does it function towards something else? Like, how does it function towards the other ideas? So, and then what you've just concluded, there's no such thing as self-justice. How does it affect others? If there's no self-justice, then what? Then kicking a puppy is just as good as petting a puppy, because there's no truth in justice. It's just in the eye of the beholder. Hey, if you are in charge and if you are in power, then you get to pretend what justice is, because there's no justice in self, in being. So it's might makes right. Meno might think that way, because he said his idea of excellence or justice or virtue is doing good to your friends and harm to your enemies. So if you hate everyone, then what's justice is killing everyone, doing a genocide. It's popular these days. So that would be what follows. And now from those, can you take those others here and can make a conclusion and then relate it back to self? Because then you see your own theory in a new way. You started by saying it's an illusion. How does it function, therefore? There is no truth and justice itself, because there's no self. Itself in being. Therefore, genocide is good, or no less good than anything else. Genocide. Therefore, conclusion. That's the last step. Therefore, you go back to the beginning and you see what you thought in a new way. Not only is self an illusion, it's genocidal. You've seen the implications that follow, and now you understand it better. So now you have a new dialectic. So hey, that's side B, by the way. You also have to do it for side A. And share it with your friends. Share it with the community. This is my opinion expressed with reason and understanding. It's not just a prejudice. I'm not an idiot with dumb opinions, racist opinions, bullshit opinions. I have some integrity. So now you've got a new definition. Not only is self an illusion, self itself, it is genocidal. So now you understand your subject in a new way. So that's what we're doing. Anyone can throw their opinions around. It's stupid and boring. Hey, if I cared about people's dumb opinions, I'd talk to my racist uncle. Or I'd let the Jehovah's Witnesses inside when they knock on my door. Hey, we have opinions. Want to hear them? Why? Why? Opinions have nothing to do with truth. You want me to be harmed by thinking stupid things? Why? Why throw opinions around? It's like monkeys throwing crap around.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
I also don't want to eat monkey crap. But we can take our opinions and phrase it in a dialectic and share it, and we can be open to seeing new things. That's the game. Why? Opinions, let's use our triads to see why that's the case. Well, let's look at this one. Opinions are in the realm of opinions. Let's write that here in a different color. Opinions relate to which realm? Opinions. The realm of becoming, the physical world, the particular. If you're reading the Phaedo along with us, Socrates says specifically the realm of being is unopinable. It's beyond opinions by definition. So if you love your opinion so much because it makes you feel smart, or mummy and daddy pats you on the head, good racist opinions, son. You're a racist like one of us. Or Doesn't have to be a racist opinion, can be a sexist opinion or just a regular opinion. I think the Cowboys are the best football team. Yes, you're one of us. You can wear the Cowboys jersey and we can go have a beer and watch the game. We are in a group bound by shared opinions. It's a level of human development that we're on right now. The next stage of human evolution is to go from being groups bound by opinions to humanity unified in understanding. Because understanding, dianoia, refers to this. And no one is excluded. No one misses the bus. Everyone can play. The only problem is, do we have the excellence of our soul or the virtue to give up our beloved opinions and move to the realm of being? That's up to you, listener. No one's going to make you. In fact, the more we try to make you, the more you're going to get stuck in your opinions. Oh, yeah, you're all calling me stupid or racist. That makes me feel like I must be right. Why? Because opinions don't have a feeling. Dianoia leads to nous. There is a feeling attached to nous, or knowing the realm of being. In fact, it's the greatest feeling. That's why it's called enlightenment by some people. Bliss. Imagine being unified with beauty itself and recognizing it's the self. So, while there are very strong levels of states of mind associated with nous, there aren't any with opinions. So when we get taught our opinions or prejudices, we try to look for something else to associate it with. So that's why they send Jehovah's Witness knocking door to door. They're just kids. They're just little kids in suits pretending their opinions have any value. And no one's going to care. You either already was raised in that, upbringing with that programming, or you're not, in case you don't give a crap. So you'll be, oh, don't waste my time. They're going to feel sad, and because they're being told off at every house. That feeling of being persecuted, religious leaders use to say that's virtue, that's the feeling of faith. Jesus was persecuted, right? That means you're good. Feel righteous when everyone hates you. So we have all these crazy little, cults and groups and conspiracy theorists and like people who believe the earth is flat. People disagree with them. That makes them just stronger in their ignorance. So we're not doing that. We're not going to say, of course, the self isn't an illusion. Think about why would you even be here? Who is asking that question? It falls down very quickly, but that doesn't matter, because somebody who is only interested in opinion doesn't care about reason and reflection. And anything that we say that might be true will just bolster their false opinions. Like we said, a self-fulfilling prophecy. If they're genuine adventurers,
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
Then they're willing to play the game, which is what phrase you're thinking in reference to a dialectic. Share it with your friends, keep an open mind, look for questions. And to go back to your question, every time you see the word altos or self in the text in the Balboa, you have an invitation to read it in all three ways. Read it with the word it. Recognize that that's just for grandma or maybe Meno. Put in the honorific that refers to self-being and self-justice in being. But also, can you create a question like we did before? We can re-rub these two together to create a question. How is the dialectic the ruling term? Does that make sense? Hopefully it won't make sense. Create a question of how you could read that very same sentence to do with the one self or the good self, which is the subject of Parmenides' first hypothesis, the self. Notice the self, and have a question about that. Carry it with you, hopefully for a very long time, because that's the game. The longer you hold a question, the more curiosity and wonder and interest and focus and attention you're feeding that question. You're nurturing the question. It's like a pet or a familiar in a role-playing game. You're leveling up your pet. That's your question. Nurture your pet. Feed him. Now, of course, we can recognize the word the, just as we needed the word the to go from a particular to the beauty, so too all of these have a self, so we can say, hey, these are all a self beauty, a self justice. What's the that is even above that? Which is what? Which is taking the same kind of question that allowed us to go from the narrative to the twist, applying it back on its twist, ousia, to see if we can discover a third level. That's how we read. Particular is a fraction of the honorific. The honorific is a fraction of the third level. Or think of it more as a refraction or a reflection. Each level of reality, so you can say this, the one self is a dimension of reality. It's a dimension. Some people like to think in terms of dimensions or frequencies. It's a realm or a realm. Now, that is reflected into the realm of being. Because even the realm of being, even if it's the divine or the creator, it has to have a cause. And the realm of being turns upon itself to know itself and uses itself as a model to create the world of becoming. That's where we start as human beings, through our physical senses in the world of becoming. Interesting. We talked about using the twist. What was the twist? Applying the principles of the twist back on itself to move up. So too does being reflect upon itself, and also to use itself as a model to reflect down. But as we return in this game of philosophy, we go back to level of being with the logos and dialectic in our back pockets, because that's what we're training in. It's a kind of education and nurture of our souls. So when we reach being, we can turn about and apply everything that we learned to reach being back on itself to give birth to that next dimension. Just as everything we learned in our watching Inception, we turn upon itself to answer the twist, but then that twist we turn back upon itself to give birth to a new level of dimension or a new question. It's the same thing. And it has to be the same thing. Why? Because the logos is the paradigm of understanding. So opinions change, and you can fight about whose opinions are right or whatever. But if understanding is true, then it has to be universal. It has to be a paradigm. It has to apply to everything. Whether it's watching a movie or levels of reality or ways of reading the self. So I hope that hasn't answered your question at all, but has given you much to wonder and ponder and be confused about. Because if so, then you're in the game. So let's take that back with us and see if we can see a demonstration of it in the text. Awesome, glad to hear it. Okay, after that first dialectic we went through, and he wasn't happy with that, let's give another one, another dialectic. Well, how does virtue function? Let's start with that. Okay, what's the functioning? Let's see if we've got it on the board. Here we go. How do you function with excellence? Well, you manage well. Says Meno. Let's pick up what Meno is saying. Let's use his own words. Just like when Brittany came into the chat, she said, there is no self. Self is an illusion. Now, her reasoning about consciousness experiencing itself subjectively didn't follow her conclusion. We're all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. The self is an illusion. Now, that doesn't follow. Because doesn't consciousness exist? If it is experiencing itself, there must be something experiencing itself. Would it therefore have a selfhood? Therefore, the self can't be an illusion. But I used her language to demonstrate how it's no use me just telling her that. That would be, I don't know. It's better just for her to figure it out because it's her quest. She's alive for a reason. But I used her language. Hey, this is what it would be like if we put it as a dialectic. The self is an illusion. So too, Socrates picked up Meno's language. Manage. He says, hey, a woman has to manage the kitchen or the household. The man has to manage the state. He's a real Sigma. So let's pick up that. Okay, if the definition of how virtue functions, so we could say it's now we're on the demonstration or the functioning part, but we're going to do a dialectic within that. Then how does managing it demonstrate? Well, you have to have temperance. You can't be a wild man running around chasing your every desires, and you have to be fair. So that's demonstration. Now dividing it up to men, women, children, and the elderly, they're the divisions, and you can talk about what happens if they do have it or what happens if they don't. If they don't, they're untemperate and unjust and they'll have failures. If they do, they will be temperate and just and have success. Therefore, so he took this for his conclusion. If it's not in self, let's see it in the text. Okay, whoever manages justly and sound-mindedly are going to be good. Therefore, what about even the young and old? 2 more divisions. If they are untemperate and unjust, can they be good? No. So they can't be good. So it's failure. Of good. Accordingly then, all human beings are good in the same way. The self way. Look, the word self is there, so you have an invitation. Good in the what way? The same way? There's the particular. They're all good in the same way. Or they're all good in the honorific way. We are all made good if we reach the realm of being. Interesting. Or the ultimate way. So every time you see the word self, you have an opportunity to create some questions for yourself. They come to be good when they happen upon the selves. What selves? Particular. When they happen upon the particular. What's the particular? Okay. Therefore, they can't be good if they are unsound-minded and unjust. No. Therefore, they have to be sound-minded and just, and they come to be good when they happen upon it. See how the word it fits? It points to the subject. They need to be sound-minded and just, and they become good when they happen upon it. Now, honorific. They come to be good when they happen upon the selves. So good must be something in the self now, a higher dimension. And they become good when they happen upon the being of sound-mindedness and just. Not the opinion, the being. So that's the twist that we can always read when Socrates talks. The honorific. Now, hopefully, you can have some fun and puzzle about what would be the ultimate, the most meaningful, The one that you have to go on a deep dive to figure out what's the next level of meaning of the film.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
But hey, that's just a theory.
What's the film theory of the real meaning? Okay. Therefore, conclusion. If the self-virtue was not in the selves in being, then people could not be good in the same way. Of course not. As we were talking about today, hey, if there wasn't truth in being, we couldn't unify and be good in the same way. I have to already agree with your opinions, otherwise we're going to have conflict, or wars, or genocides, or whatever. But we can all become good in the same way is if truth is beyond opinion in the realm of being, that can be accessed through dianoia, understanding the dialectic applied to being, and nous, experiencing it for yourself out of your body, and maybe even beyond that, if there's a higher level. Wisdom, maybe. Or phronesis. Now then, seeing as the same virtue exists for all, self-virtue, try to remember what Gorgias said when he said that what he declared self to be, virtue to be, the self to be. Meno says, to rule human beings. Well, hang on a second. Does this apply to a child or a slave? They don't rule people, rule human beings. Nope, doesn't appear to be the case. Appearance, right? He's interested in appearance in the world of particulars. Then, to be able to govern, we can add this. It's not managing or governing human beings, but managing yourself. And to do so with justice and never unjustly. Meno says, I believe so. Belief. For justice is a virtue, is virtue. Which one, Meno? Virtue or a particular virtue? Is justice a particular virtue or is it virtue itself? So this might be a hint. Because the movement to particulars in the dialectic is the movement from demonstration to divisions. So that might be the introduction to the next level of the dialectic. So he said, hey, let's nail down this next dialectic. A dialectic within the demonstration of virtue. Okay, managing well. How do you manage well? Well, you need to have temperance and justice. You have to be well ordered, calm, patient, and also be fair. That would be English words that we might use. Okay, divide it up into particulars. Hey, whether you're a man or a woman or a child or an elderly person, if you don't have it, you won't reach the good. You'll fail to reach the good. Therefore, you need it to have the good. Okay, synthesize that. Therefore, if we don't have self in being, then people would not be good in the same way. So if these don't exist in being, then it can't be accessible to all of the different people. Now, how does that relate to opinions? Well, if there is no truth, there's just opinions, then it can't be accessible to everyone. So if you're not born Jewish, you're going to have to die. I'm sorry. Because you're not made good in the same way. You're only made good if you have faith in our religion, Judaism, Catholicism, Protestant, Anglican, you name it, there's hundreds. And things bound by faith means to be bound by opinions. There's no understanding in nous. That's why there are so many wars built on opinions and groups. It's freaking stupid. The next level is going, hey, realizing this, hey, all people can be made the good in the same way. You don't have to be murdered or genocided, so long as being or virtue exists in being, in the self that exists in being. Hooray! Therefore, humanity can be saved, and we ourselves can reach a higher level of virtue because we don't have to, blow up the other team. We're all made good in the same way. And let's apply it to their conclusion. Therefore, what are we managing well? So, just like in our example with if self is an illusion, after having gone through the dialectic, we can come back and say not only is it an illusion, it's genocidal, because that was the conclusion from our division. So too, from our conclusion here, when we relate it back to the self, we see it in a new way. Not only are we managing well, what are we managing well? The self. Why? Because children and the elderly, these divisions, don't manage other people. So our conclusion has to unify all of the divisions. If it doesn't apply to some, doesn't work. It's not a principle. You're wrong. Your opinion's wrong. Good to find out your opinion wrong. That's learning. Don't be precious or bigoted about your opinions. Be open to learning. Be joyful like Socrates is about learning. So we started with a definition that is managing well, and our new definition, going back to the top, is we are managing ourself well. And managing well means to do it justly and not unjustly. So we've learned something. And even Meno accepts that. So what's virtue? How does virtue demonstrate itself? Well, we already know its definition from our previous dialectic, which was its excellence is a single eidos, and then we keep an eye on it when we do dialectics. Here are some other divisions or examples. Therefore, it's the same. So men, women, white, black, Protestant, Anglican, or that doesn't really count because that's a belief. But doesn't matter who you are, men or women, it's all the same idea. Therefore, it doesn't differ. So, what's our definition? A definition from our definition dialectic is excellence or virtue is a single eidos that doesn't differ. So we're also learning about what it means to be an idea. It doesn't differ. It's unchanging. So that's cool. Now, what do we learn about how it functions or demonstrates from our demonstration dialectic? You manage well the self in a just and unjust way. So what is it? An idea that doesn't change. How does it function? Manages well in a just, manages the self well. You use excellence to manage the self well. Not other people, which is curious. Considering Meno said it's to be able to harm your enemies and do good to your friends and escape punishment and manage the city or manage the house. Hi, welcome to the chat. So now we see that it's actually excellence is to manage yourself well, and it has to be done with justice. So maybe we're at the end of that dialectic. So now Socrates is like, okay, what follows definition, self to self. Let's do it a bit smaller. So we've got definition, which is what can you say about the subject in relation to itself? Demonstration. What can you say about the subject in relation to something else, which was managing? We are reading the Meno to discover what is virtue, how do we learn virtue, and how do we read the text so we can discover how Socrates thinks, which is called learning the dialectic. So we're trying to discover the truth. After demonstration, we have division. There's a YouTube channel, you can find a link below to catch up on past streams if you're curious about any of these things. What is truth? What is being? What's the meaning of life? Can we know it? What's that experience of knowing the meaning of life like? Once we know it, what do we do with it? How do we share our insights and understanding with others in a way that can invite everyone to play? Is there anything beyond fulfilling our meaning of life? Oh, yes. Aren't the four, I don't know what cardinal means, but the four virtues that Socrates has given in the Republic, temperance, courage, wisdom, and justice, are they vital to understanding and enter the honorific? That is a good question. Yeah, that's a great question. How could you make that case? How could you understand that case? How could you show that it is? That understanding the honorific is necessary for each of those four virtues. That would be a good way of unifying all virtues into one. But how could you make that case? And how could you demonstrate your understanding in a dialectic to share it with other people? Great question. I hope you keep working on that, and I hope you share it with us. You share your progress with us on Discord. That's a banger of a question. So, definition, what can you say about itself? Then how does this defined self function to another? Then how does that other function to others? That's division. So we've done a dialectic on this, so now we're on this one. I'm guessing, I don't know yet. I might be way off base, but it seems to be panning out so far. So a division dialectic is this, if a division dialectic on virtue, that's the hypothesis I have that I'm rolling with. Let's read on and see what's there. Before I do, I will take a quick break. Only for a second, I'll be right back. All right, let's jump in. Okay, now, what's really cool about carrying the dialectic or carrying a question with you when you read is you might recognize something that you might not have seen the first time. So, as Maximus was saying, the second time you watch a film or the second time you read through a text, you'll see it differently. So, because you've got some questions, you've got the twist question or something else or some other reason for reading it again. Well, here he said, hey, is virtue, is justice, now, okay, it's dikaios, which is justice. One of the reasons why we need to read the Balboa is we see the Greek underneath. So we get familiar with certain Greek words, like this one is dikaios, or dikaiunion, which comes from the word dikaios, which means justice. And if we see the Greek, we can recognize the kind of habits of our translator. So some translators have lots of bad habits. Thankfully, Balboa isn't like that, but he does have certain habits or preferences. And one of his preferences is to translate justice as righteousness. I don't like righteousness. I prefer to stay with the word, and the word is justice. So whenever we see righteousness, I will say justice. I was smashing my head from the chat to grasp, because one can question someone's idea of honorific, and one in particular can say he is honorific or a different concept of it. Like Meno, in his mind, he was probably in honorific, but his virtues clearly was not in check and did not put in question his reason. And someone with questionable reason was clearly questionable opinions. The four virtues put our reason in check. Well, the word honorific means the realm of being. That's what it kind of points to, which is non-physical. So if you're in the realm of being, normally you're standing still or sitting somewhere in meditation and you're not in the body anymore. Socrates famously just stood in one spot for a long time, several times, to leave the physical to go in the realm of being. But there is a meaning for honorific, that the honorific that's still in the body. Sometimes we call that being in flow, or being in the zone, where you just effortlessly, without thinking or planning, work with the full force of your being, perfectly appropriate for the situation. So I'm not sure whether Meno is in honorific. I'm not even sure he thinks there is such a thing as being, because when Socrates asked him what is virtue, he gave a description about people. People isn't in being. Oh, it's managing the city well. So when Socrates came to the conclusion that it's what we're actually governing isn't the city in the physical world, it's the self. It's not just being able to govern, it's being able to govern the self, justly and never unjustly. So he's elevating it. Get out of the physical world. That's temporary. You're only going to live for a short amount of time, and you can't bring your physical things with you, but you can bring your nature of self or soul with you. That's what's going to make a difference. He did have an idea. Now that's the difference. Idea as concept. Idea is in being. They sound similar. That's why it can be confusing. He did have a concept of virtue tied to the physical world. But when we talk about idea, we mean eidos, which is a beholding of the realm of being. So if you know people, or you research people online or in books who've had an experience out of body, or a meditative experience, or good catch. I'm glad that you caught that, and thanks for sharing. It's always fun to see somebody have an insight. You have to be confused first. So we have to be okay with being puzzled, and as you say, banging your head, smashing your head. You need that. So anybody watching, become comfortable with having your head being smashed, metaphorically, being puzzled, because then when you see it, it has an enlightening effect. By the way, when you saw the difference, did you notice anything in your state of mind? How would you describe that instant when you suddenly saw? Because in this game, sometimes it happens so quick we don't notice it. Just like in the text, there'll be like this thing here, the self. It happens so quick, we brush over it and we don't even notice he said the word self. So we have to be aware of the significance of the word to catch it. Now, we're human beings. We're not just reading for Apollo, we're reading for Aphrodite, our state of mind. So when you suddenly saw something, that's what we're after. That's Aphrodite. That's seeing it as a greater whole. That's insight or inspiration. So we need to blow that up. So I encourage you to talk about it or make notes about it. What was it like when you suddenly saw it in a new way? The more we pull that up, the more we can value that moment, look for that moment, and see it in greater depth. That is enlightenment. Suddenly seeing the whole in a new way is the nature of enlightenment. We are building mini enlightenments in the game as we proceed. But you have to point it out. You have to write it down. What's it like? Use a dialectic, use metaphor to talk about what was that state of mind like when you suddenly saw it. Share it with your friends on Discord. Share it with your friends over coffee. And when I say coffee, we have a sip of coffee. We're crazy. But that's important. It's not just understanding its states of mind. So cherish those moments of insights. Blow them up. Sing songs about them. Paint a painting about it. Whatever you can to blow it up. Make a dialectic about it. Make a metaphor about it. Whatever you can do to blow up that state of mind. So good for you, Maximus, and I encourage you to do those things. What was Socrates' afterlife beliefs? That's the Phaedo. There's a series on the Phaedo that we have that you can access on YouTube, where we read for ourselves what happens when we die and how is our life a preparation for that. Because Socrates in the Phaedo talks about the way we live affects how what happens to us when we die. And he says, by the way, you might, if you live in a certain way, like a drunken, lecherous way, you might come back as a donkey. Or if you live in a different kind of way, maybe you're a tyrant, you might come back as a chicken. Or a hawk. And if you live you're not extreme, you kind of live a pretty good life, you got some, you're just, you're fair, you have temperance, you're not pursuing your pleasures, but you do it without philosophy, maybe you'll come back as a social animal, like a bee that gets eaten by a dog, or an ant. They're social animals, but they have no mind. So the importance of living with justice, as we're learning here, with philosophy, because you might come back as a bee, or you might come back as an ant that gets stepped on by an elephant. So these are all possible reincarnations that Socrates talks about, and we need to take those bits of information and organize into dialectic and understanding for ourselves. So we're not just believing him. It's no good just to believe Socrates. That's not going to affect your reincarnation. That's literally what he said about coming back as an ant that gets stood on by an elephant. You need to make it your own, understand it yourself, and verify your understanding in direct experience of the realm of being. Well, that's a nice one. And that's why philosophy is so freaking amazing. Not only are we learning how to understand, unlike most college courses where you just repeat and believe to get, a good grade or whatever, but you can actually verify your understanding in direct experience. You don't have to believe what the afterlife is like. You go there and look around. That's the whole point. So the dialectic is a sustained focus on a question. So some people come to the chat with opinions. They're not going to focus on their opinion. They've got it all figured out already. They're like Meno. I don't have to think about what justice is. I already know what it is. Well, how can you focus on it for a length of time? Because to focus for a length of time is formally meditation. But there are other things involved in meditation. Sustained focus, open-mindedness. If you're certain with your beliefs and prejudices and opinions, you're not open-minded. That's not meditation. It's open-mindedness, sustained focus, on an object that is actually knowable. It's no use meditating on, I don't know, I got to think of a better popular reference. Mr. Beast. No use meditating on Mr. Beast. He doesn't exist in being. But if you meditate on virtue, which is one of the ideas, eidos, then your meditation can transform into contemplation, where you actually join with it. That's called nous, or episteme, or noesis, Greek words that mean what it's like to know that which is knowable. And that's why These are all the reincarnated people come back as animals. Quiet down, you people. Do philosophy instead. Okay, they should have all done philosophy. Right, so yeah, it's philosophy is about the realm of being, so therefore it's you can actually confirm what you understand, which is fantastic, which is why it's so great. One of the reasons. So I recommend you check out the Phaedo series that we have. Otherwise, you'll just believe, and that's no good for anyone. Good starting point, though. Trusting what Socrates is saying, repeat it, get it in memory. All right, so let's keep going. Okay, Meno, is justice virtue itself or a particular virtue? What do you mean by this? Just as in any other case, for such as, for example, roundness, if you wish, I at least say, okay, so what's he doing here? Is a particular shape, and in this way signifies that it is not simply shape. Therefore, by this I would signify that there are other shapes. Yes, I can see you're a philosopher. You know that you're a philosopher if you can do sound effects.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
And you don't want to eat a monkey.
I don't want to eat a monkey. I don't want to eat a monkey. Wow.
That means you're wise. You would indeed be speaking correctly. Okay, so round isn't shape, it's a kind of shape. Since I also say that there is not only justice, let's highlight that. The significance of having the Greek underneath is we can do this. Since there are other virtues. Adite. What are they? Says Socrates. Tell me. O he who knows. And in such a way that I would tell you the other shapes if you would take that request from me. So we're learning about what it's like to do philosophy. You ask, you invite. There's not demands. Therefore, you also tell me what the other virtues are. Use analogy. Hey, have a nice day. Thanks for hanging out. So using the analogy of shapes, do the same with virtues. Now then, as far as I am concerned, courage and sound-mindedness or temperance and wisdom and magnanimity. Oh, thanks for the follow. Thanks for the follow. At last, Knibber? Atlas Knibber. Abacaneza? Thank you for your follow. What are they? Okay. Magnanimity. Now, I have no idea what magnanimity means, but we have the internet, so we can look it up for ourselves. And we have the Balboa translation, so we don't have to merely believe the translator. So let's play that game. So now we are in space. Ooh. Now we have to bring up the internet. There we go. We paste it here. So we have the Greek. We copy this. Put it in Google Translate. Megalopropia. Megalopropia. So what we're reading is megalopropia. And we put it in our Greek dictionary. Megalopropia. See how great the internet is? So not only do we have the Balboa, we have access to internet, so we can literally, we don't have to be like one of the 10 masters of Greek language, we can actually look it up for ourselves. Anyone can play the game. Isn't that cool? Magnificence of style, elevation. Okay, let's look at a different one. Magnificence of character. Ugh. Let's see what Wiktionary tells us. Magnificence. Bulgarian language? We don't know Bulgarian. No. All right, so it means magnificence, but I do recognize the megalo. Megalo is a Greek prefix that means mega or super, lots of. So let's get rid of megalo and just see what we have lots of. Megalo, this. Nope. Okay, let's do this. Hooray! Woof. Okay, let alone. No. Let alone to allow to suffer. No. Okay, not that one. No. Okay, it's not that one. Let's try this. Get rid of mega, see what we get. Nope. Okay. So I had a hunch that we could take out the mega and find the root of the word, but I'm not having much luck. So I think megalo, what is it? Megaloplepia just means magnificence. Okay, one more. No, it's just magnificence. All right. So, magnificence. So we've got courage. Let's blue, courage, sound-mindedness, wisdom. Now these are 3 of the virtues. Oh, and justice was the other one we've mentioned. Not only justice. So those are the 4, but he's also adding a 5th called magnanimity, magnificence. He is from a rich family after all. And there are many others. So notice, many others, and he's interested in the realm of appearances. What realm of reality would he be in if he's interested in appearances? And what cognitive function is he using? What cognitive function were we talking about relates to the world of appearances? Oh, Meno, we are undergoing the same experience, since again we have found many virtues while searching for one. Now this is a common puzzle in philosophy. How do we go from the many to the one? The many virtues to the one, the many examples of beauty to beauty itself. The many selves to the one self. Okay, same experience. Only this time, in a different way than before. However, we are unable to discover the one that exists throughout all of them. So he seems to be setting the stage for division. Look at how many divisions we are. Yet again, we're in the level of division. So it's really adding some credence to our hypothesis that if this is a division dialectic on virtue, the same way our first two were a definition dialectic and a demonstration dialectic. Because says Meno, I am unable to find in what way you carry out your search. He needs to be learning the dialectic. He needs to subscribe to this channel. Because he doesn't know the way that he's searching. That's what we're learning in the dialectic. In order to grasp, okay, let's call it this. The way you carry out your search. In order to grasp. We're talking about the ideas. Idea means to grasp or behold. One single virtue that applies to all. Just as in all these other cases. If life gave you another chance to live, would you choose to study philosophy again? That is a great question. Take that question, polish it up nicely, carry it with you, nurture it. Think of it like a familiar or a pet. Bring him up, raise him up. That's a fantastic question. Because we're doing philosophy right now. Is there a better way of living? And after we've lived this way, do we want to do it again? Good question. I'm glad you shared it. Keep it alive. Reasonably indeed. So reasonably, Meno doesn't know how to search for the one virtue. He doesn't know how to search for being. Reasonably indeed. Why reasonably? Well, maybe because Socrates knows his teacher. And how do we search for being? How do we reach idea? How do we reach nous? Maybe the dialectic? And the art of the logos? But if I am able, I will eagerly lead us forward. Good for you, Socrates. This happens because you certainly understand that this line of inquiry applies to everything. What? Are we learning a paradigm of how to think and how to investigate and how to search? This is a question. I like that question. Let's keep reading and find out. For if someone were to ask you this, which I mentioned just now, what is shape, O Meno? And if you were to answer that self, that self is, now, we know that there are three possibilities of reading this word. Let's just take the obvious one, the grandma one, the narrative. If someone said to you, what is shape, O Meno? And if you were to answer it. If you were to answer it and say that it is roundness, and he responded to you just as I did by asking whether roundness is shape or a particular shape, you would without a doubt answer it is a particular shape. Meno said, very much indeed.
What?
It is not the case then that because of this, is it not the case then? So he often does his questions and negatives. Is it not the case? I don't know why he does that. I have some hypotheses that I'm carrying, but I don't know. Is it not the case that because of this, there are also other shapes? Why, yes, says Meno. And if he indeed proceeded to ask you what kind they are, would you tell him? I would indeed, says Meno. Meno's speaking in a pompous voice now. I would indeed. In the chat, if one existed apart from other humans, would they still value goodness or virtue? You're full of good questions today, Alas Kaneba. Interesting. So is virtue something we seek because of how others relate to us? So is our goal to find out what the many think and just conform? Or do we value goodness or virtue apart from how others react? Self itself. And why would we? Now that last question is not as interesting as the other ones because hot dogs don't exist in being. So if we nurture a question and share it with our friends and wonder about it and create hypotheses and then learn more and then create another hypothesis and then make it into a dialectic and then do another dialectic about hot dogs being sandwiches, there's not going to be much of a payoff. But if we do all that to your first two questions, it prepares our mind to access higher dimensions of reality. That's why philosophy is the spiritual journey, personal development journey. Because we're wondering about things that exist in being before the physical world, causing the physical world. But hot dogs, I don't think exist in being. Can we gain an idea of what a sandwich is? Well, that highlights the two levels of the word idea. Well, the word in Greek is idea, which does not mean concept. It means an aspect of that realm of being that we can behold out of body. Now, the way it's been mistranslated over time is as concept, because the word sounds kind of similar to idea in English. Anglicized, we might say it, anglicized. So yes, we can have a concept of a sandwich or a hot dog, but I don't think we can grasp it as an aspect of reality itself. The same way if you look up people who've had those experiences, or if you had one yourself, how do they describe it? Say, oh, I knew everything all at once. So infinity, or oneness, or it was like the goal of evolution, or telos, the goal, or it was absolute, the most beautiful thing imaginable, beauty itself. I experienced it as complete knowingness, ousia. It was bliss. The feeling of it was bliss, the highest possible feeling. Everything was perfectly ordered the way it should be. Is that justice? So all of these ways of understanding or distinguishing the qualities, eidos, of the realm of being, that's what eidos is. It's not forms, it's not concept, it's not even ideas. Now, it's very obvious if you read the text, but unfortunately, we have only had a text with the ancient Greek for about a decade or so. So we have some catching up to do. Or not catching up to do, we have a exciting new adventure we can take that's very different from the way philosophy has been understood and spirituality has been understood up until now. But you tell me, if you do, now that you've asked the question, if you do experience the eternal, immortal realm of being, please come back and share it with us and let us know if one of the things that you saw while you were there was a hot dog or a sandwich. Please come back and share it with us. If immortality were possible, would you want to be immortal? Well, to answer that question, I would want to know what immortality means. In which case, you'd have to do a dialectic to define it for me. Like if I didn't know what a bike meant, say, hey, if I could give you a bike, would you want it? Well, I'd say, well, what's a bike? You'd have to talk about what a bike is itself. Definition. But that's not really explaining what a bike is. You'd also have to say how it functions itself to others, or demonstration. How does it function? Oh, it functions to get you to places quicker. You can get to places quicker. Well, that's not enough of an understanding. how does it function to other others? Oh, you can join a BMX club. You can do wheelies and impress girls. You can learn how to do tricks. Okay? But then after having defined the bike itself, talked about how it functioned, talked about how it can be used or divided up to other others, how do you then synthesis analysis? How do you then relate back to the bike itself? You'd have to tell me that, well, you'd have to clean the bike. You'd have to oil the chain. You'd have to put tassels in the handlebars so you look awesome. You'd have to say all of those things. That would be a dialectic on a bike. So for me to answer that question of whether or not I would want to be immortal, would you please, if you are willing, do a dialectic on what immortality is? Outline the 4 categories of what it is. But actually, you'd have to go one step further. After you've done that, you've talked about if, that's side A, if immortality exists, which means in being. You also have to give those same 4 responses to side B. If immortality doesn't exist in being, but is something else. Maybe immortality is some sort of curse in the physical world, like it's one of those genie trick questions. When I say immortal, I mean, I don't know, whatever you can come up with, but it's not in being, it's something only in the physical world. So that would be a side A and side B. So there are in total 8 categories, 8 paragraphs you'd have to do to give a dialectic on immortality. Now you might ask me, well, hang on a second, where do I get the material for that exercise? Like if I was to give a dialectic on what a bike is, I can go down to my bike shop and ask an expert on bikes and all these things. That's what I would organize. Or I could look it up on the internet. I could ask ChatGPT for information that I would organize. But where do I get the material to do a dialectic on immortality? That's why we read Socrates. That's why we read the Phaedo. That's why we're listening to him talk about excellence in being to Meno. He's giving us the terms and the understanding we can use to do a dialectic on immortality or virtue or beauty. Right, so you're starting. You've got 2 things. Infinite wisdom. So what category would you say infinite wisdom is? So infinite wisdom, would that be how you would define it, or would it be how it functions if it exists in being? Staying the same. So non-changing. Would non-changing be part of your definition of immortality or part of how it functions towards something? Is it wisdom of something? So maybe wisdom would be here, maybe? That's the question. And then for each one you do over here, you have to do one over here. If immortality didn't exist but was something fake, how would you define it? What would be like the opposite of that? And how would it function? So don't give up your question. I'm giving you a challenge. Do a dialectic, and you don't have to get it right. I hope you don't get it right. But after going through it, you will have a greater understanding of something that exists in being, immortality. So you will have leveled up your seeing, and you'll have more information, and you can do another dialectic if you want. But this is the gauntlet I'm setting out for you. That's your call to adventure.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
Do a dialectic on your question on immortality. Otherwise, I won't be able to answer your question. So that's the challenge. Are you going to take it up To take up that challenge, would you have to have virtue, courage, open-mindedness? Are these virtues? And likewise, if you don't take it up, what does that mean for your soul? I've heard a theory that Socrates' being isn't real. Of course, that would be side B. Socrates was murdered. Of course. Just because something is true doesn't mean everyone already believes it. We don't care what other people think. Otherwise, how many people are racist out there? How many people voted for Trump? Does it mean that they're right? That Trump is an excellence of a ruler who should be managing the state because he is a personification of virtue and he has the wisdom of what is true and what is the goal of humanity, so he can organize society towards that end? Does he have that knowledge and wisdom? Does he have an understanding to be able to communicate it? Does he have an art to be able to use it to benefit people? 40% of the American population said yes. What are your thoughts? So we want it for ourselves. It might be a while until other people catch on. So, is roundness, would you say, Meno, that roundness is a particular shape? Is this because that there are other shapes? Yes. And if the person questioning you proceeded to ask you, talking about being in a dialectic, what kind they were, what would you tell him? Would you tell him? Would you be Meno, would you be open to doing a dialectic if somebody asked you? Of course I would. Or that's coincidence.
Wow.
Alaskanaba. How do you pronounce your name, by the way? I'll just say at last. At last. If somebody asked you to follow a dialectic, would you do one? Meno said, I would indeed. Then, in turn, if he were to ask in a similar way about color, what it is, dialectic, the first category of the atlas. All right. Oh, I see atlas. What does KNBR stand for? Right, so to ask what it is the first category. If somebody said, hey, not the divisions down here of shape, but what is it itself? So in other words, the first category of the dialectic, you'd still include the examples if you want. Would you do it about shape? Yes. Now Socrates is saying, hey, would you do it about color? What it is itself. And if you were to answer that it is white, what's that? An example. Division. And after this, the questioner asked whether white is color or a particular color. You would say it's a particular color, right? So he's kind of helping him out. He's kind of walking him through dialectic. Now here's our question. Why is Socrates walking him through a dialectic and not letting him answer for himself? Oh, you thought it looked cool. Cool. Well, didn't Meno just say I don't know the way in which you carry out your search to find a single thing. And Socrates said, yeah, reasonably, indeed. That's his whole sentence. Another way of saying that is, oh yeah, no, you can't. I asked you what virtue is. You spent all this money on a teacher. I asked you what a virtue is. You gave me examples. And now we've gone through 2 dialectics. Hopefully you're stuck. And he said, well, no, the reason is I don't know the way that you think. That you search for ideas. You search for a one out of many. How do you reach the one? I don't know the way you do it. Socrates says, yeah, of course you don't. No doi, he said in Greek. Yeah, I know you don't know how to think. But if you do learn how to think, that inquiry applies to everything. If you learn this way of thinking that I'm teaching you, you can apply it to everything. Immortality, beauty, being, justice, hot dogs and sandwiches if you like. Bikes. So he doesn't know how to do it, which says a lot about his culture. It says a lot about his family. It says a lot about his partner, and it says a lot about his teacher. That they're all giving him big up props. So in the chat, hey, if a lot of people think a certain way, what do you think about it? Well, I know what Meno would think. So maybe that's why Socrates is walking him through the steps of how to do a dialectic. Someone would ask you a question, you'd give your best answer. They'd ask a follow-up question with their eye on the idea in being. He's already told us that. So maybe that's why he's walking. I don't know. It's a good puzzle though. Okay, so the question would ask you, hey, is that a particular color? Let me tell you what you would answer, right? I'm going to ask it, but I'm going to help you out. You would say that white is a particular color. So he's asked whether white is a color or a particular color. You would say a particular color because there also happens to be others. So the questioner asked, and then you would say, so he's doing two, right. So, Socrates said, do you know how to think in a dialectic? And Meno goes, oh, I don't know. I don't know how to search in this way that you're searching, to take the many particulars into the one. And Socrates said, indeed. And then Socrates said, would someone please put that goat back in his pen? And then someone said, the gate has fallen off. If we can't, we're trying to fix it. All right, that's exactly what happened. Okay. Meno said I would, so he is asking him. He's guiding him, but he is asking him. Do you agree? I'm not forcing these down your throat, am I? And if indeed he urged you to tell him the other colors, you would mention the others, which happen to be no less colors than white. Yes. Good. Good, Meno. Good, Meno. Then if he pursued the logos, now, clues for us. That may or may not apply to Meno, because who knows? This is the thing. Our level of learning and development is not contingent upon those around us. So while we like to push the implications, which is the game, of what happens if we learn the logos, if we learn the dialectic, if we do dream analysis and midwifery in our society, in our schools, in all institutions, every day at school before morning tea, what kind of a world would we have? What kind of a world would we have if we asked these questions of all of our leaders and politicians? Would it be a world without war, without competition, without exploitation, without fascism, capitalism, slavery? While that's fun to do, our own individual development is not contingent or based on what others are doing. Who knows where they're at in their journey? Or if humanity will even survive the movement into the level of learning the logos. That's the next stage, but we can take it even if humanity doesn't. So what? Well, so even if Meno isn't familiar with the dialectic, we can be learning whether or not Meno decides to. And another example of that is Socrates is talking to us too, through time, magically. We have a sound effect for magically. Yeah, that'll do. So when he says we are pursuing the logos, I'm guessing Meno doesn't know what the logos is because he doesn't know the dialectic, and when he asks to define excellence, he's in the world of becoming. But we do. Well, we don't know what it is, but we see the value in it and we're searching in it for it, and the Phaedo says we have to learn it as an art. So he's talking to us. So this search is pursuing the logos. So if you're doing a dialectic of the dialectic, write this word down. This is a key word. You can put it in one of your categories. What are we doing? Pursuing the logos. Oh, and I've lost my sound effects. Pursuing the logos. Excuse me.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
We don't want to eat a monkey. We want to pursue the logos.
I don't want to eat a monkey.
Thank you, Joe Rogan. So if he pursued the logos just as I do, so he's defining it and he's demonstrating it. See how great it is to look through our understanding. You see through your understanding. That's leveling up. So our looking through allows us to recognize that even here he's saying, I am defining what it is and I'm demonstrating it. What are we doing? Pursuing the logos. How are we doing it? Well, I'm demonstrating it. Right, yeah, that could be a fun dialectic. Of course, if you were to do a dialectic, so the question is, what if Socrates didn't know anything, was just playing cool? Well, he said he doesn't know this. What does that mean? He says, I don't know what this is. Where is it? Let's go back. Right at the beginning. Meno says, can you tell me, Socrates, is virtue teachable? Right at the start. Socrates says, I stand in knowing this, in need, whether excellence or virtue is teachable or not teachable. And I don't even know what in the world self-excellence is. He is saying knowing. What is knowing? So we have some questions. What is knowing? Why is Socrates someone who we would suspect of anybody probably does know? Why is he saying he doesn't? What is knowing then? And why is he applying it to the self-excellence? And then Meno said, hang on a second, are you telling me that the great Socrates doesn't know what virtue is? Am I to go home and tell everyone about this? Like Meno was really like laying some smack down. And Socrates says, not only that, but I have not up till this present time met anybody who knows. What?
Wow.
What?
And then Meno says, hey, haven't you met my teacher? And Socrates says, I did indeed. Oh, slam, snap. Oh, he mega owned him. What a clapback. I did indeed.
Wow. Wow.
He didn't know what solipsism was. He didn't know what deontological moral philosophy was. He didn't know what utilitarianism meant.
Right, so Socrates really slammed him. And but not only briefly because Meno was talking smack. But yeah, so Socrates claims to not know what it is and whether or not it can be taught. What does that mean? Ah, interesting. Good question, though. Keep it alive. Okay, if someone pursued the logos, just as I do, and said that we arrive at many, but that is not the way for me, seeing as you call these many by one certain name. So if anyone gives you a description, That's not the way. Because, hey, you've called them by the same, hey, you say beauty is this or that, but you call beautiful person the same word as beautiful painting and beautiful puppy. What's beauty without it being used on a particular thing in your physical world? Adjective. And say that there is not one of them which is not a shape, even when they are opposed to each other. Straight and round. But what is this which applies no less to the... I guess I was trying to think, what could be a shape that is opposed to each other, but is still a shape? Not one of them is not a shape. So they're all shapes, even if they're opposed. I was thinking, what could be an opposition? I thought, what about straight and round? What is this that applies no less to the round than it does to the straight? So that was a little bit of fun for me. And which you call shape, since you say the round is no more shape than the straight. Or would you not say it is in this way? I would indeed. Take notice then, when you speak in this way, do you say at that time that the round is round no more than the straight? Or that the straight is no more straight than the round? Of course not. Okay, so he's dividing it up into his arguments. He's taking side A and side B. Well, no, he's still in side A, that if there is such a thing as shape, but he's taking what follows, what are positives? What can you say about it? You can say that round and straight are both shapes. But so that follows. So there's a good conclusion. But you can also take the opposite. Take the absurd. Do a contradictory. Hey, would you say that round is just as round as a shape, as straight? Or straight is just as straight as the round? No. No, that's wrong. So conclude from the contradiction or the opposite, that, or the negative or the wrongness that follows, you can make a conclusion. This is division. Of course not. Then certainly, so you can say that the round shape is no more shape than the straight, nor the straight the other, nor the same with the other. You speak the truth. So he's saying, hey, your answer, round to shape, doesn't work. Because round is more round than a straight line, but round is no more shape than a straight line. So whether you're applying it to round or straight, they're still shapes. Whereas you can't say the definition is round, because you can have a straight shape, but it's not round. So you can't define shape by round. Does that make sense? I hope so. Can you think of a metaphor? Use beauty. Make your own metaphor as you go. How would someone define beauty? A beautiful woman. Ah, but is a puppy also beautiful? Ooh. Is a woman the same as a puppy? No. But they both can be beautiful, yes. Okay, then what in the world is this which has the name of shape? So this is, what in the world is this which has the name of shape? Now this is an expression he likes to use, what in the world, or what after all. Usually it's a highlight or indicator that has the name of shape. So this is another thing we do in the dialectic. We look to name. How do definitions relate to names? Please try to say, so we're naming, we're doing a dialectic, but we're also following the logos. We're also doing as Socrates does, but we're also naming. How do we name things accurately? Then if you responded in this way, how long do we have? In this way to the questioner, either about shape or color, but I at least do not understand what it is you want, dear sir, nor do I know what it is you mean, then he would probably have been amazed and responded, what, Meno? You do not understand that I am searching for that which is the same in those cases? Or would you still have nothing to say about these cases, Meno? If someone asked, what is the same which applies to all, the round and the straight, and to those other aspects which you call shapes? Try to answer, Meno, in order that you may also have some practice for the answer about virtue and excellence. What are we doing? Practicing. The dialectics that we do. Yes, thank you for joining. Thanks for your questions. Good luck in your study. The questions that we're doing, the dialectics we're doing, the invitations for people to do dialectics, what are they? They're practices. So practice doing a dialectic you can do, like we did bikes a moment ago. They're practice for being able to follow a dialectic about virtue or excellence. So we're practicing. You might even say this is a division of the dialectic. If you were to do a dialectic on dialectic, which we seem to be doing as we read the text, you could say we could not only define the dialectic, and we have things like following the logos, but we would also be able to do divisions. Do a dialectic on shape, do a dialectic on color. They're practices for our ability to do it on virtue and excellence. So if we can do that, we can look at what Meno is doing and judge him the way Socrates is. And we can follow the dialectic even better than Meno. So we're getting practice for our ability to relate to Socrates through this text, through time. He's talking to you. And these are practice. So on that note, make some practices yourself. Could you use what you've learned of dialectic so far to do a dialectic on shape, on color, using the 4 categories? The search that Meno hasn't been taught by his teacher how to do. I don't know many teachers who teach us this, so we're kind of in the same boat. We need some practice. So on that note, I hope you take that as an invitation, a call to action, a call to adventure.
I'm looking for someone to share in an adventure.
As Gandalf says to the hobbits, practice some dialectics yourself. Share them in the chat below. Encourage people to share them. Share them with your friends over coffee. Share them in the Discord. And take it as practice for when we return next time to continue reading. The nurture that you're doing to your soul. And hey, as you do that, keep in the back of your mind a question, a wonderment. Is what I'm doing excellence? This practice of the virtue? With the goal in mind to be able to return and do more good, to manage more good my reading by this practice? Is this good? Is this virtue? I hope that's a question you can carry. I hope that's a wonder. I hope you enjoy the practice. I hope you decide to share it with us. And I hope to see you next time. Feel free to like and subscribe on YouTube. Join on Discord. You get notifications when we go live. You can join us on Twitch. You can support the channel on Patreon. And hopefully there'll be some donations, links somewhere soon if you wish to support the channel. And there's a link to the free text of the Balboa translation below. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to see you next time.
I don't want to eat a monkey.